This entry claims that Pangea, the ancient supercontinent that existed roughly 335 to 175 million years ago, holds official status as a United States territory or state. The theory stems from a misreading of various geological survey documents and territorial expansion laws from the 1800s. Pangea, for those unfamiliar, was the massive landmass that contained all of Earth's continents before they drifted apart through plate tectonics. Believers point to a supposed clause in the Louisiana Purchase that granted the United States territorial rights extending to all lands that were once connected to the purchased territory through natural geological processes. They argue this language technically includes Pangea, since all current U.S. land masses were once part of this supercontinent. The theory gained traction after a supposed leaked Department of Interior memo from 1987 referenced ongoing territorial assessments of pre-drift continental claims. This document, which has never been verified, allegedly discussed the legal implications of America's Pangean inheritance rights. Some versions of this theory suggest that certain government agencies maintain active research into reclaiming Pangean territories. They claim this explains America's interest in Antarctic research stations and deep ocean drilling projects. The most elaborate variant proposes that time travel technology allows the U.S. to retroactively establish sovereignty over Pangea. According to this version, secret government facilities conduct temporal territorial establishment missions to plant flags and establish legal claims in the Permian period. Proponents often cite the fact that no other nation has formally disputed America's theoretical Pangean claims as evidence that this legal framework actually exists in international law. Bovine hormone conditioning centers on the widespread use of recombinant bovine growth hormone, known as RBGH or RBST, injected into dairy cows since the early 1990s. This synthetic hormone increases milk production by 10 to 15%, but conspiracy theorists claim it's doing far more than boosting dairy yields. The theory suggests that residual hormones in milk and beef are fundamentally altering human development patterns. Supporters point to the dramatic shift in average height and puberty onset times since the hormone's introduction. The average age of puberty in girls has dropped from 16 years old in 1900 to around 10 years old today, with some cases documented as early as 7 years old. What makes this theory compelling is the documented presence of insulin-like growth factor 1, or IGF-1, in milk from hormone-treated cows. IGF-1 survives pasteurization and directly affects human growth patterns when consumed regularly. The European Union banned RBGH in 1999, citing health concerns, while the United States continues widespread use despite mounting research. Theorists highlight the case of Robert Wadlow, who reached 8 feet 11 inches before his death in 1940, attributing modern giants and unusual growth patterns to systematic hormone exposure through the food supply. They point to increased rates of gigantism and acromegaly in regions with heavy dairy consumption compared to areas using hormone-free livestock. The conditioning aspect refers to the gradual physiological changes occurring across generations of hormone-exposed populations, creating what some researchers call developmental drift, where each generation shows increasingly altered growth patterns compared to pre-hormone baselines.
Like this video and subscribe to Maker.
Mattress firm concentrations reveal an oddity hiding in plain sight across American suburbs and shopping centers. Drive through any mid-sized city and you'll likely spot multiple mattress firm locations within a few blocks of each other, sometimes literally across the street from one another. The sheer density defies conventional retail logic. In Houston alone, observers have documented over 20 stores within a 10-kilometer radius. Phoenix shows similar clustering, with some intersections featuring a mattress firm on 3 of the 4 corners. Online mappers have created heat maps showing these concentration zones, revealing patterns that seem to follow no obvious demographic or economic reasoning. The business model raises immediate questions. Mattresses typically last 8 to 10 years, meaning most customers shop for them infrequently. Unlike coffee shops or gas stations that rely on daily customers, mattress stores depend on occasional purchases of high-ticket items. Yet these locations maintain expensive retail spaces, full staffing, and extensive inventory. Internet investigators point to the company's rapid expansion strategy during the 2010s. Mattress firm acquired competitors like Sleep Train and Sleepy's, often keeping competing locations open rather than consolidating. This created situations where former rivals now operate under the same corporate umbrella just blocks apart. Financial analysts note, the high profit margins on mattresses can sustain lower sales volumes than other retail categories. A single mattress sale can generate enough revenue to cover days of operating costs. However, critics argue even these margins cannot explain the mathematical impossibility of so many stores serving overlapping customer bases. The most persistent theory suggests these excess locations serve as fronts for money laundering operations. The cash-heavy nature of mattress sales, combined with difficult-to-verify inventory counts, would theoretically provide cover for financial irregularities. Proponents note how rarely customers actually shop in these stores during business hours, yet they remain operational year after year. Company representatives have attributed the clustering to lease obligations inherited through acquisitions and the complexities of breaking commercial real estate agreements. They claim consolidation efforts are ongoing, but constrained by existing contracts and market conditions. Baby pterodactyls on the black market suggests that living pterodactyls not only survived extinction, but are being bred and sold through underground networks. According to this theory, remote populations of these flying reptiles persisted in isolated regions like the Amazon rainforest, certain Pacific islands, and deep cave systems in Papua New Guinea. The conspiracy claims that wealthy collectors pay anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000 for juvenile pterodactyls, which are allegedly easier to transport and train than adults. These baby creatures supposedly measure only 12 to 18 inches in wingspan when captured, making them small enough to smuggle in modified pet carriers. Cryptozoologist Jonathan Whitcomb documented multiple sightings of what he called living pterosaurs across the Pacific, particularly around Umboy Island. Local residents there describe creatures they call ropin that match pterodactyl descriptions. The theory suggests these populations became the source for black market breeding operations. Several incidents fuel these claims. In 2012, customs officials in Malaysia reportedly seized a shipment containing unusual reptilian creatures that were quickly classified and removed from public records. A leaked photograph from this incident allegedly shows small, leathery-winged animals that bear striking resemblance to pterodactyl reconstructions. The breeding process supposedly requires specific temperature and humidity conditions that mirror Mesozoic-era climates. Underground facilities in countries with lax exotic animal regulations allegedly house these operations. The creatures reportedly have lifespans of only 8 to 12 years in captivity, creating constant demand for new specimens. Private collectors supposedly keep these animals in climate-controlled aviaries, often disguising them as large bats or exotic birds to avoid detection. The theory claims that several Silicon Valley tech executives and Middle Eastern oil magnates maintain secret pterodactyl collections, treating them as the ultimate status symbol among the ultra-wealthy. DNA analysis allegedly proves these creatures carry genetic markers consistent with pterosaur lineages, though all such evidence remains conveniently classified or destroyed by government intervention. Bioma over genoma suggests that your environment shapes you far more than your DNA ever could. This concept challenges the mainstream scientific focus on genetic research by claiming that ecosystems and biological surroundings hold the real power over human development and behavior. The theory centers around the idea that pharmaceutical companies and genetic research institutions deliberately ignore environmental factors because they cannot be patented or monetized in the same way as genetic therapies. Instead of looking at how forests, urban landscapes, and microbial communities influence our biology, scientists are pushed toward expensive genetic solutions that keep people dependent on medical systems. Supporters point to studies showing how people living in different biomes develop distinct physiological and psychological traits within just a few generations, changes that happen too quickly to be purely genetic. They cite research on how gut bacteria from different geographical regions can completely alter personality traits and cognitive function, suggesting that where you live matters more than what genes you inherited. The conspiracy deepens with claims that certain governments deliberately design urban environments to promote specific behavioral patterns. This includes everything from the types of plants used in city planning to the microbial composition of water supplies. The goal would be creating populations with predictable responses while maintaining the illusion that genetics determine individual outcomes. Research from the 2010s on epigenetics gets twisted into evidence that environmental factors can override genetic programming entirely. This means that controlling someone's surroundings gives you control over their biology, regardless of their family history or inherited traits. The most concerning aspect involves allegations that certain locations are being bioengineered to produce specific population effects, creating living laboratories where human behavior can be studied and modified through environmental manipulation rather than direct intervention. This entry claims that Judas Iscariot was actually the one who died on the cross, not Jesus Christ. The theory suggests that after Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss in the Garden of Gethsemane, a divine or supernatural switch occurred. Some versions claim that God transformed Judas to look exactly like Jesus as punishment for his betrayal, while others propose that Jesus used his divine powers to alter appearances. The Roman soldiers, having never seen Jesus up close before, would have simply crucified whoever looked like the man they were told to execute. Supporters of this idea point to certain Gnostic texts, particularly the Gospel of Judas discovered in the 1970s, which presents Judas in a dramatically different light than traditional Christian accounts. They also reference the Gospel of Barnabas, a medieval text that explicitly states Judas was transformed to resemble Jesus and was crucified in his place while Jesus was taken up to heaven. The theory explains several puzzling elements from the crucifixion accounts. Why did Jesus seem to die so quickly when crucifixion typically took much longer? Why did some witnesses not immediately recognize him? Why did his appearance seem different to his followers after the supposed resurrection? This interpretation suggests that Jesus never actually died, which would fundamentally alter the entire foundation of Christian theology. The crucifixion and resurrection, central to Christian faith, would instead become an elaborate case of mistaken identity orchestrated by divine intervention. The cover-up, according to this theory, began with the remaining apostles who discovered the truth, but chose to maintain the narrative that Jesus had died and risen, as it served their movement better than admitting their leader had escaped while his betrayer paid the ultimate price. The Three Ecologies presents French philosopher Félix Guattari's radical framework, claiming that our planet faces a coordinated attack across three interconnected domains. Published in 1989, this work exposes what Guattari calls integrated world capitalism, a global system deliberately targeting environmental, social, and mental ecology simultaneously. Guattari argues that ecological destruction isn't accidental, but represents a calculated strategy. This system operates beyond traditional capitalism by colonizing human consciousness itself. The environmental crisis serves as cover for deeper manipulation of social relationships and individual minds. According to this theory, mass media functions as a psychological weapon, creating what Guattari terms mass passivity through deliberate infantilization of opinion. The mental ecology component reveals how television and mass communication systematically break down critical thinking. Citizens become docile consumers, unable to recognize the interconnected nature of environmental destruction, social breakdown, and psychological manipulation. This three-pronged assault ensures that people remain trapped in what Guattari calls fatalistic passivity, while planetary systems collapse around them. The social ecology dimension exposes how capitalism destroys community bonds and authentic human relationships. Traditional social structures get replaced with artificial market relationships, leaving individuals isolated and dependent on corporate systems for meaning and connection. Guattari's most disturbing claim involves the synchronization of these three attacks. Environmental destruction creates anxiety and fear, making populations more susceptible to media manipulation and social control. Meanwhile, psychological conditioning prevents people from recognizing these patterns or organizing effective resistance. The theory suggests that only a complete ecosophical revolution across all three domains can break this cycle. This requires simultaneously healing the environment, rebuilding authentic social connections, and reclaiming individual consciousness from corporate programming. Critics dismiss this as philosophical abstraction, but supporters point to increasing mental health crises, environmental collapse, and social fragmentation as evidence of this coordinated assault on human existence. The Smithsonian data breach refers to claims that a 2020 ransomware attack on the institution's donor database revealed far more than just personal information. In May 2020, hackers infiltrated Blackbaud, the third-party software company managing donor records for the Smithsonian and hundreds of other cultural institutions. While officially described as targeting only demographic data like names and addresses, certain researchers believe the breach exposed something much more significant. The theory centers on the timing and targeting of this specific attack. Unlike typical ransomware operations that cast wide nets for financial gain, this breach specifically hit cultural institutions, museums, and universities. The Smithsonian paid an undisclosed Bitcoin ransom to ensure the stolen data would allegedly be destroyed, but security experts noted that hackers rarely honor such agreements. What makes this particularly compelling to researchers is the Smithsonian's long history of alleged archaeological cover-ups. For over a century, the institution has faced accusations of suppressing discoveries that contradict mainstream historical narratives, from giant human remains in the early 1900s to Egyptian artifacts reportedly found in the Grand Canyon. The breach theory suggests that donor databases contained more than fundraising information. These systems allegedly held correspondence between wealthy benefactors and museum officials discussing sensitive archaeological finds, funding for specific suppression efforts, and documentation of artifacts that never made it to public display. The 24 Bitcoin payment, worth approximately $250,000 at the time, seems unusually high for standard donor information. Security analysts point out that the hackers specifically demanded proof of data destruction rather than simply taking the money and disappearing, suggesting they understood the true value of what they had accessed. Some researchers claim leaked fragments of emails surfaced on dark web forums shortly after the breach, containing references to storage facilities and numbered artifact collections that don't appear in any public Smithsonian catalogs. Dream-palaeontology as new gnosis suggests that accurate knowledge of prehistoric life can be obtained through dreams and altered states of consciousness. Practitioners claim their dream visions reveal detailed information about extinct species that conventional fossil records have yet to uncover. The theory operates on the premise that human consciousness can tap into what some call morphic fields, or collective memory banks, containing information about Earth's biological history. Unlike traditional paleontology, which relies on physical evidence, dream paleontology practitioners enter meditative or dream states, specifically seeking encounters with ancient creatures. Several individuals have documented remarkably detailed descriptions of prehistoric animals through these methods, later claiming vindication when similar species were discovered through conventional means. Robert Moss documented cases in the 1990s where dreamers described specific anatomical features of dinosaurs that matched fossils found years afterward. The gnosis aspect refers to this being treated as direct experiential knowledge rather than mere imagination. Practitioners distinguish between random dreams about dinosaurs and what they term paleontological downloads, vivid, information-rich experiences that feel distinctly different from ordinary dreams. Some claim to have witnessed entire prehistoric ecosystems, complete with behavioral patterns, environmental conditions, and species interactions that fossil evidence alone cannot provide. They argue that consciousness exists beyond individual lifetimes and can access evolutionary memory embedded in the planetary field. Critics point out the obvious issues with verification and the tendency for these visions to align suspiciously well with popular depictions of prehistoric life. However, supporters maintain detailed dream journals and cite instances where their visions preceded official discoveries by months or years. The practice has gained a small but dedicated following among those who blend New Age spirituality with amateur paleontology, creating what they see as a revolutionary approach to understanding Earth's deep past. This entry refers to the theory that vaccines actually reduce the risk of autism. Unlike the more widely circulated claim that vaccines cause autism, this idea flips the narrative completely. Some researchers have suggested that certain vaccines might actually lower the chances of developing neurodevelopmental conditions, including autism spectrum disorder in specific cases. The concept draws on studies comparing vaccinated and unvaccinated populations, where the vaccinated groups sometimes show lower reported rates of autism diagnoses. One explanation is that some infections during early childhood, especially serious viral or bacterial illnesses, can cause inflammation or trigger immune responses that may play a role in neurodevelopment. Vaccines, by preventing those infections, might reduce that risk. A 2019 study published in the journal Annals of Internal Medicine tracked over 600,000 children in Denmark. It found no link between the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine and autism, and hinted that vaccinated children had slightly lower rates of diagnosis overall. The findings didn't just reject a connection. They raised the possibility that early immune protection could support more stable neurological development. Another study out of the University of Sydney analyzed over 20 datasets involving more than 1 million children. The conclusion: no causal link, and again, some indications that vaccinated children had fewer developmental delays across the board. The theory remains on the fringe not because it's wildly outlandish, but because it contradicts a louder narrative that has dominated certain online circles for years. Still, the idea continues to attract quiet interest from researchers focused on the complex relationship between the immune system, early childhood development, and neurological outcomes. It's not a mainstream talking point, but the numbers are there, if you know where to look. Fukushima Gateway's theorists claim the 2011 nuclear disaster in Japan didn't just release radiation into the environment, but tore holes in the fabric of reality itself. According to this theory, the massive energy release from the reactor meltdowns created dimensional rifts that allow entities from parallel dimensions to cross into our world. Believers point to unusual electromagnetic readings recorded in the weeks following the disaster, claiming these weren't just radiation signatures but evidence of interdimensional activity. The theory gained traction when several researchers noticed unexplained energy spikes in areas around the Fukushima Daiichi plant that didn't match typical nuclear contamination patterns. These anomalous readings allegedly continued for months after the initial meltdown, suggesting something beyond conventional physics was occurring. Supporters of this theory cite reports from cleanup workers who described seeing shadowy figures moving through contaminated zones, figures that didn't appear on radiation detection equipment or thermal imaging. Some accounts mention electronic devices malfunctioning in specific patterns that theorists believe indicate dimensional interference rather than simple radiation damage. The gateway theory suggests that high levels of radiation combined with the specific geological conditions of the disaster site created a perfect storm for reality manipulation. Theorists point to ancient Japanese folklore about the region being a spiritually active area, claiming this made it more susceptible to dimensional tears. Several independent researchers have allegedly documented temperature fluctuations and magnetic field distortions around the exclusion zone that can't be explained by standard nuclear physics. These findings, while dismissed by mainstream science, fuel ongoing speculation about what really happened when those reactors melted down. The theory extends beyond simple dimensional portals, with some claiming the gateways allow for time displacement effects and reality distortions that the Japanese government has worked extensively to cover up. Memphis rap sigils suggest that the underground hip-hop scene from Memphis, Tennessee, deliberately embedded occult symbols and magical imagery throughout their music and visual aesthetics during the 1990s and early 2000s. This theory centers on the observation that Memphis rap artists frequently incorporated what believers claim are actual sigils, pentagrams, and other esoteric symbols into their album covers, music videos, and promotional materials. Unlike typical artistic imagery, these symbols allegedly follow specific magical traditions and serve as more than mere decoration. Memphis rap emerged from the city's particularly gritty underground scene, characterized by lo-fi production, dark themes, and an aesthetic that embraced horror movie samples and violent imagery. The genre's pioneers like DJ Paul, Juicy J, and the collective 3-6 Mafia built their brand around explicitly satanic and occult references, with album titles like Mystic Styles and The End. Believers point to specific recurring symbols across multiple artists and releases. Inverted crosses, pentacles, and what appear to be chaos magic sigils show up repeatedly in album artwork from labels like Prophet Entertainment and Hypnotize Minds. The hand gestures frequently displayed by these artists are interpreted not as simple gang signs, but as mudras or magical hand positions used in ritual practice. The theory extends beyond visual elements to claim that the repetitive, hypnotic beats and chanted vocals function as actual spell casting. The frequent references to drug use, violence, and supernatural themes are viewed as attempts to channel dark energies through the music itself. 3-6 Mafia's Academy Award win for It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp only fueled speculation, with believers claiming mainstream success proved the effectiveness of their supposed magical practices. The group's later shift toward more commercial sounds is seen as either abandoning their occult roots or successfully completing their ritual work. Oikeiosis represents an ancient philosophical concept that certain researchers claim has been weaponized by modern power structures to manipulate human psychology on a global scale. This Greek term, originally developed by Stoic philosophers around the 3rd century before the Common Era, describes the natural human tendency to expand circles of care and concern, starting with oneself, then extending to family, community, nation, and eventually all of humanity. Modern behavioral scientists have allegedly co-opted these ancient teachings. The concept suggests that by understanding how humans naturally form attachments and loyalties, those in positions of power can artificially trigger this expansion process. Corporate marketing departments reportedly study Oikeiosis principles to create brand loyalty that feels as natural as family bonds. Political strategists allegedly use similar techniques to make voters feel personally connected to distant leaders they have never met. The more controversial claims suggest that global organizations deliberately employ Oikeiosis manipulation to erode national sovereignty. By encouraging people to identify more strongly with international causes than local communities, these groups supposedly weaken traditional power structures. Some researchers point to specific examples, like the rapid adoption of global environmental movements in the 2010s, arguing that the emotional intensity of these campaigns shows signs of manufactured oikeiosis rather than organic concern. The theory gains additional credibility from documented psychological studies, showing how easily human attachment patterns can be influenced through specific messaging techniques. University research from institutions like Harvard and Stanford has confirmed that targeted exposure can indeed alter people's sense of belonging within weeks. Critics argue this represents nothing more than natural human evolution toward global consciousness, but believers maintain that the speed and uniformity of these changes across different cultures suggests deliberate orchestration. Phantom hang gliders on Mount Everest refers to one of the earliest high-altitude UFO sightings in recorded mountaineering history. In 1933, British climber Frank Smythe was descending alone from a record-breaking altitude of 8,565 meters on Everest's North Ridge when he witnessed two strange objects floating in the sky above him. He described them as resembling kite balloons in shape, but one possessed what appeared to be squat, underdeveloped wings, and the other had a protuberance suggestive of a beak. The objects hovered motionless, but seemed to slowly pulsate. Smythe was exhausted from 2 nights in the death zone and had been hallucinating from oxygen deprivation, even sharing his mint cake with an imaginary climbing companion. This context has led many to dismiss his sighting as altitude-induced hallucinations. However, what makes this case intriguing to conspiracy theorists is the specific detail Smythe provided, and his reputation as a meticulous observer and accomplished mountaineer. The objects exhibited characteristics that wouldn't become associated with UFO phenomena until decades later. Smythe described them as having wings and hovering capabilities, features that modern conspiracy theorists interpret as resembling hang gliders or early aircraft designs. What's particularly noteworthy is that this sighting occurred 14 years before Kenneth Arnold's famous 1947 UFO encounter that sparked the modern flying saucer craze. Smythe documented this experience in his book Camp 6, where he carefully described sensing a ghostly companion and seeing the pulsating objects hovering over Everest while climbing alone. Some researchers suggest that the extreme altitude and atmospheric conditions around Everest might create unique optical phenomena or even act as some kind of beacon for unexplained aerial craft. The phantom hang glider theory proposes that Mount Everest, standing as Earth's highest point, serves as an observation post for unknown aircraft or interdimensional visitors. The mountain has long been associated with mysterious phenomena, including ghost sightings and unexplained presences that climbers report feeling in times of distress. Theorists argue that Smythe's sighting represents evidence of ongoing surveillance of human climbing attempts on the world's tallest peak. Modern hang gliding and paragliding enthusiasts have since successfully flown from various points on Everest, with documented flights by pilots like Jean-Marc Bovine in 1988 and Pierre Carter in 2022. But conspiracy theorists maintain that Smythe's 1933 encounter predates any known human flight technology capable of operating at such extreme altitudes. This entry refers to the theory known as Bam Margera afterlife. It claims that Bam Margera, the professional skateboarder and television personality known from Jackass and Viva La Bam, either died or experienced a form of spiritual or metaphysical transition sometime in the early 2020s, and that the person seen afterward is not the same. The theory draws on Bam's erratic public appearances, sudden physical changes, and conflicting news stories about his health. In 2023 alone, reports circulated that he was hospitalized, placed on psychiatric holds, or declared missing, only for him to reappear later with a completely different energy and behavior. Some pointed to changes in his voice, facial structure, and even eye color, saying it resembled a reset more than a recovery. The phrase afterlife in this context doesn't always refer to literal death. Some believe Bam underwent a near-death experience or medical coma that caused a kind of ego death, leaving behind the version of himself that people remember from the 2000s and 2010s. Others go further, suggesting body double theories, cloning, or that he was subject to a deep-level psychological reprogramming process. One strange piece of evidence often cited is a 2023 video where Bam refers to himself in the third person, saying, "Bam Margera's gone." He then describes himself using a different name, claiming he's reached a higher awareness and is no longer who he once was. That clip circulated among forums and iceberg lists as a kind of soft confession. To supporters of the theory, the afterlife isn't about ghosts or heaven. It's about identity collapse, media manipulation, and the quiet disappearance of the original person under the pressure of addiction, fame, and possibly forced rehabilitation programs. Autistic water refers to the conspiracy theory that fluoridated drinking water is deliberately causing autism in children across the globe. This theory claims that fluoride added to public water supplies triggers autism spectrum disorders, despite overwhelming scientific evidence to the contrary from organizations like the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, American Dental Association, and World Health Organization. The conspiracy gained momentum in the 2010s when several controversial studies suggested potential links between fluoride exposure and lowered IQ scores in children. A Harvard meta-analysis in 2012 examined 27 studies and found that children in high fluoride areas had lower IQ scores than those in low fluoride areas, with an average loss equivalent to 7 IQ points. However, these studies primarily examined populations with fluoride levels far exceeding those used in typical water fluoridation programs. Researchers have noted that countries with water fluoridation, like the United States, Canada, and Australia, report increasing autism prevalence rates, while some European Union countries that rejected fluoridation also show high autism rates. This correlation has fueled speculation about fluoride's role in neurodevelopmental disorders. The theory suggests that fluoride acts as a neurotoxin that disrupts brain development. Some researchers claim fluoride affects enzyme activity, inhibiting 22 different enzymes while stimulating 20 others, potentially altering energy metabolism and triggering metabolic dysfunction. They argue this creates oxidative stress and inflammation that could contribute to autism development. Fluoride conspiracy theories trace back to the 1950s when opponents claimed water fluoridation was a communist plot to undermine American public health and dumb down the population. These fears were immortalized in Stanley Kubrick's film Dr. Strangelove, where a character initiates nuclear war to prevent communists from contaminating precious bodily fluids with fluoridated water. Modern versions of the theory have evolved beyond Cold War paranoia. Recent political figures like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. have promoted removing fluoride from water supplies, linking these efforts to broader anti-vaccine movements and autism conspiracy theories. The conspiracy has created what researchers call a third rail effect in fluoride research, where scientists studying potential fluoride risks face intense scrutiny and are sometimes labeled with what one researcher described as a scarlet AF letter. In the past 5 years, 74 cities have voted to remove fluoride from their drinking water, despite thousands of studies showing it prevents cavities. The movement mirrors vaccine autism fears, persisting despite scientific debunking. What makes this conspiracy particularly persistent is its exploitation of legitimate parental concerns about rising autism rates and environmental toxins, combined with distrust of government health programs and pharmaceutical companies. The Vatican moonbase theory centers on claims that the Catholic Church possesses photographic evidence of extraterrestrial structures on the lunar surface, captured through their advanced astronomical equipment. This theory gained significant traction when ufologist Scott Waring analyzed high-resolution lunar photographs taken by the Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, located on Mount Graham in Arizona. Waring claimed to have discovered what he described as alien bases hiding in plain sight within these 26 megabyte images. According to his analysis, the Vatican telescope captured details that NASA allegedly edits out of their own lunar photography. The Vatican Advanced Technology Telescope, known as VATT, is a legitimate 1.8-meter optical instrument that began operations in 1993. The telescope features an unusually fast f1.0 primary mirror design, allowing it to capture exceptionally sharp images across its field of view. Mount Graham's location provides some of the clearest, steadiest, and darkest skies in continental North America, making it ideal for detailed astronomical observation. Waring specifically identified two distinct structures in the Vatican lunar photographs. He highlighted what appeared to be a massive open doorway in one formation, while another structure sat positioned inside a crater, both strategically located near shadows that would help conceal them from casual observation. When Waring reached out to Vatican astronomer Chris Cabali, offering his services to help search for additional evidence of alien life on the moon, Cabali politely declined, stating he had no need for finding such objects. This response fueled further speculation among theorists about whether the Vatican astronomer already possessed extensive evidence of lunar anomalies. The theory connects to broader claims about Vatican involvement in extraterrestrial cover-ups, including allegations from former intelligence official David Grush, who testified before Congress in 2023. Grush claimed Pope Pius XII secretly shared information with the United States about a crashed UFO recovered by Mussolini during World War II. Some researchers believe the Vatican's extensive archives, spanning 50 miles of shelving, may contain historical records of unexplained aerial phenomena dating back centuries. The Vatican Observatory itself represents one of the world's oldest astronomical research institutions, with a history extending back 2.5 centuries. The moonbase theory suggests that while space agencies like NASA carefully scrub their lunar imagery, the Vatican's independent astronomical observations may have inadvertently documented evidence of alien presence that has been overlooked or deliberately ignored by church astronomers focused on traditional celestial research rather than searching for signs of extraterrestrial activity. This entry suggests that Jesus Christ was actually a United States president from the future who traveled back in time to ancient Palestine. The theory claims that Christ's advanced knowledge of human nature, his prophetic abilities, and his revolutionary social concepts weren't divine inspiration, but rather the accumulated wisdom of someone who had already lived through 2,000 years of human history. Believers point to his understanding of complex moral philosophy that wouldn't emerge in mainstream thought for centuries. Some versions specify that Christ was the 47th president, traveling back from around the year 4000 to prevent a catastrophic timeline where humanity destroys itself. His mission involved planting the seeds of Christianity to guide human moral development along a more peaceful path. Proponents highlight anachronistic elements in the gospel accounts. They note Christ's references to concepts that align suspiciously well with modern democratic ideals, his emphasis on individual worth over tribal loyalty, and his advanced understanding of economics when discussing wealth distribution. The theory gained traction in online forums during the 2010s, with some claiming that certain presidents have displayed unusually detailed knowledge of ancient Middle Eastern geography during private briefings. Others point to supposed time travel experiments conducted at government facilities as evidence that the technology exists. More elaborate versions suggest that multiple historical religious figures were actually American political leaders sent back to guide different civilizations. These theorists claim to have identified linguistic patterns in ancient texts that match speech patterns found in presidential archives. The most dedicated believers maintain detailed timelines attempting to match presidential terms with historical religious movements, though they remain deliberately vague about which specific president made the journey to become the most influential figure in human history. Entity merging describes the theoretical process where non-human intelligences permanently combine with human consciousness or physical form. This concept appears across multiple conspiracy frameworks, from alien hybridization programs to interdimensional possession scenarios. The theory suggests that certain entities from parallel dimensions, extraterrestrial origins, or occult realms can literally fuse with human beings at a cellular or consciousness level. Unlike temporary possession, entity merging creates a permanent hybrid state where the original human personality becomes fundamentally altered or completely overwritten. Military whistleblowers from projects like Montauk and Looking Glass have described witnessing soldiers who returned from dimensional experiments with drastically changed personalities and abilities they never possessed before. These individuals allegedly displayed knowledge of languages they had never learned, advanced mathematical concepts beyond their education level, and in some cases, telepathic capabilities. The process reportedly involves specific electromagnetic frequencies that weaken the barriers between dimensional planes. Conspiracy researchers point to classified experiments conducted at underground facilities in Dulce, New Mexico, and beneath Denver International Airport as primary sites for these procedures. Medical professionals working in black projects claim that successful merging subjects show unusual brain scan patterns, with neural activity in regions that typically remain dormant in normal humans. Blood work from these individuals allegedly reveals DNA sequences that do not match any known terrestrial organism. The Greys are said to use entity merging as their primary method of infiltrating human society, creating hybrid operatives who maintain human appearance while serving alien agendas. These merged beings supposedly retain access to collective alien consciousness, while appearing completely normal to friends and family members. Some researchers believe that rapid personality changes in public figures, especially those involved in space programs or advanced technology development, indicate successful entity merging operations designed to influence human technological progress from within. Homunculus recipes refer to detailed instructions found in medieval and Renaissance alchemical texts for creating artificial human beings in laboratory flasks. These aren't metaphorical processes, but literal step-by-step guides that alchemists genuinely believed would produce living, breathing miniature people. The most famous recipe comes from the Swiss physician Paracelsus in the 1500s, who claimed he had successfully created multiple homunculi using a mixture of human biological material, horse manure, and 40 days of careful incubation in a sealed glass vessel. His instructions specify that the resulting creature would grow to about 12 inches tall, possess human intelligence, and serve as a loyal companion to its creator. Other alchemical manuscripts from this period contain variations of the process, with some calling for the addition of mercury, sulfur, or even powdered philosopher's stone. The German alchemist Count Johann Ferdinand von Kufstein allegedly created 10 homunculi in 17th century Vienna, keeping detailed records of their personalities and feeding schedules. What makes these recipes particularly intriguing to conspiracy researchers is their remarkable consistency across different time periods and geographic locations. Documents from Prague, London, and even colonial America contain nearly identical procedures, suggesting either a shared source of hidden knowledge or actual successful experimentation being passed down through secret networks. Modern analysis of these texts reveals sophisticated understanding of what we now recognize as principles of genetics and cellular biology, centuries before such concepts were officially discovered. Some researchers argue that these weren't primitive superstitions, but encoded instructions for advanced biotechnology, possibly inherited from lost civilizations or extraterrestrial sources. The recipes themselves remain surprisingly detailed, down to specific temperature ranges and timing intervals that align with modern laboratory protocols for cell cultivation. Tesseract Earth presents the theory that our planet exists as a four-dimensional hypercube rather than the three-dimensional sphere we perceive. A tesseract, for those unfamiliar, is essentially a cube that extends into a fourth spatial dimension. Think of how a square becomes a cube when extended into 3 dimensions. A tesseract is what happens when you extend a cube into 4 dimensions. While we can only visualize its 3-dimensional shadow or cross-sections, the complete structure would contain 8 cubic cells connected in ways our minds struggle to grasp. Believers in this theory claim that what we experience as Earth's surface represents just one face of this 4-dimensional structure. The remaining 7 cubic faces supposedly contain parallel versions of our reality, alternate timelines, or entirely different realms of existence. The theory gained traction through the work of mathematician and mystic Charles Howard Hinton in the early 1900s, who wrote extensively about four-dimensional geometry and its spiritual implications. Modern proponents point to unexplained phenomena like the Bermuda Triangle, spontaneous human combustion, and reports of people vanishing without a trace as evidence of dimensional bleeding between Earth's various faces. Some versions of the theory suggest that ancient civilizations possessed knowledge of Earth's true four-dimensional nature. They cite the precise geometric properties of structures like the Great Pyramid and Stonehenge as evidence that these monuments were designed to interact with higher dimensional space. The mathematical framework becomes particularly intriguing when applied to gravity and magnetic fields. If Earth truly exists as a tesseract, gravitational forces would theoretically pull from all 8 cubic faces simultaneously, potentially explaining anomalies in local gravity measurements and the behavior of migrating animals who seem to navigate using invisible dimensional markers. Certain researchers claim that government agencies have been secretly studying these dimensional properties since the 1940s, using the knowledge to develop experimental transportation technologies and communication systems that operate outside our perceived three-dimensional space. The Roman Empire of Bouvet Island suggests that ancient Roman explorers not only reached one of the most isolated landmasses on Earth, but established a permanent settlement there centuries before its official discovery. Bouvet Island sits in the frigid South Atlantic Ocean, roughly 1,500 kilometers southwest of South Africa. This Norwegian territory spans just 49 square kilometers and remains almost entirely covered by glaciers. The island experiences some of the harshest weather conditions on the planet, with temperatures rarely rising above freezing and constant battering from Antarctic storms. According to this theory, Roman expeditions during the height of the empire somehow navigated these treacherous waters and established an outpost on the island sometime between the 1st and 3rd centuries. Believers point to supposed archaeological evidence that mainstream science allegedly suppresses or dismisses. The claims center around reported discoveries of stone structures beneath the ice that supposedly display Roman architectural techniques. These theorists cite unnamed research expeditions from the 1970s and 80s that allegedly photographed carved stones with Latin inscriptions and what appeared to be foundation remnants of Roman-style buildings. Some versions of the theory suggest the Romans used Bouvet Island as a strategic waypoint for further exploration of Antarctica or as a secret mining operation for precious metals. Others propose it served as an exile location for political prisoners, effectively creating a frozen Roman penal colony in the middle of nowhere. The theory gains supposed credibility from the island's unusual discovery history. French explorer Jean-Baptiste Charles Bouvet de Lozier first spotted it in 1739, but couldn't land due to ice conditions. The island was then lost for nearly 70 years before being rediscovered, leading conspiracy theorists to wonder what might have been found and covered up during those missing decades. Modern satellite imagery occasionally shows dark patches on the island's surface that believers interpret as artificial structures poking through the ice, though scientists explain these as natural rock formations and volcanic activity. This entry refers to the theory known as the Spermophagic roots of Christianity. At its core, it suggests that early Christian rituals may have incorporated symbolic, or in some interpretations literal, consumption of semen as a sacred substance. The term spermophagic literally means sperm eating, and this theory explores how bodily fluids, especially male reproductive fluids, were once considered vessels of divine essence in some esoteric traditions. This idea branches from older Gnostic sects and mystery schools, many of which believed that semen carried the logos, or divine word. In some early Christian-adjacent circles, especially groups labeled heretical by the official church, there were rituals that focused on preserving or consuming this essence in symbolic ways to achieve spiritual transformation or unity with the divine. One group often cited is the Fabianites, described by early church fathers like Epiphanius in the 4th century. He accused them of conducting secret ceremonies where bodily fluids, including semen, were ritually collected and consumed as part of a communion-like experience. Whether these descriptions were accurate or intended as religious smears is still debated, but the writings exist and have been quoted in scholarly literature. The theory connects this to modern Christian communion, the act of consuming the symbolic body and blood of Christ. Some argue that the idea of spiritual nourishment through ingestion of sacred substances has older, more carnal roots that were sanitized over time. Bread and wine became the safe stand-ins. Supporters of the theory say this represents a larger pattern, ancient esoteric knowledge being rebranded into acceptable religious forms. Critics, on the other hand, claim these were either fabrications by rival sects or misinterpretations of symbolic language. It's one of the more obscure and uncomfortable claims on the list, but it's backed by real historical sources, just buried under centuries of doctrinal cleanup and theological revision. Nothing outside your vision exists challenges one of our most basic assumptions about reality, that the world continues to exist when we're not looking at it. This concept draws from philosophical solipsism, the idea that only your own consciousness can be verified as real. Everything else, including other people, objects, and even entire continents, might simply be constructs of your mind or projections that appear only when your attention turns toward them. The theory suggests that your visual field creates reality in real time. When you turn your head to look behind you, that space comes into existence at the moment of observation. The restaurant you just left ceases to exist the instant you walk out the door. Your bedroom vanishes when you leave for work, only to be reconstructed when you return home. Some variations propose that reality operates like a video game engine, rendering only what's currently in your view to conserve processing power. Areas outside your immediate perception exist in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither real nor unreal until observed. The concept gains strange credibility from quantum mechanics experiments, where particles seem to exist in multiple states until measured. The double-slit experiment shows that light behaves differently when observed versus when it travels unmonitored. Believers point to the brain's ability to fill in blind spots and create seamless vision from fragmented input. They argue that if your mind already constructs so much of what you perceive, why assume anything exists beyond that construction? The theory raises uncomfortable questions about peripheral vision and memory. Did you actually see that person walk past, or did your mind generate the movement? Are your childhood memories evidence of past events, or simply data files supporting the illusion of continuity? Modern neuroscience reveals that the brain predicts and fabricates much of conscious experience, building a model of reality rather than passively receiving it. This predictive processing happens so smoothly that the constructed nature of perception remains hidden. Iceberg Psyops suggests that the very conspiracy theory icebergs we browse through are themselves psychological operations designed to manipulate public perception. The basic premise claims that intelligence agencies and other organizations deliberately create and spread these layered conspiracy charts to achieve specific goals. Rather than simply debunking conspiracy theories outright, this approach allegedly uses a more sophisticated strategy of controlled information warfare. According to this theory, the icebergs serve multiple functions. They mix genuine government cover-ups with completely fabricated nonsense, making it difficult for people to distinguish between legitimate concerns and fantasy. A real scandal about surveillance programs gets buried alongside claims about lizard people ruling the world. The psychological manipulation reportedly works through what researchers call the poisoning the well technique. By placing credible information next to absurd theories, the entire collection becomes tainted in the public mind. Someone investigating actual government misconduct might hesitate to speak up, fearing they'll be lumped in with believers of more outlandish claims. Proponents point to documented cases where intelligence agencies have used similar tactics. The Central Intelligence Agency's Operation Mockingbird involved influencing media narratives during the Cold War era. More recently, some researchers note how certain conspiracy theories emerged or gained traction suspiciously close to when real scandals were breaking in the news. The timing element particularly intrigues believers of this theory. They observe how elaborate conspiracy discussions often spike precisely when attention should focus on verifiable government wrongdoing or corporate malfeasance. The iceberg format itself allegedly exploits human psychology. The deeper levels create a sense of exclusive knowledge and intellectual superiority, encouraging people to spend countless hours researching increasingly bizarre claims, instead of organizing around issues they could actually address. Whether intentional or not, these digital rabbit holes certainly consume enormous amounts of time and mental energy that might otherwise go towards civic engagement. This entry refers to the theory that solutions to the famous crypto sculpture can be found hidden within Bethesda Game Studios' video game code. Crypto stands outside CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia, a curved copper sculpture containing 4 encrypted sections created by artist Jim Sanborn in 1990. 3 sections have been solved over the decades, but the 4th section, known as K4, containing just 97 characters, remains one of cryptography's most famous unsolved puzzles. The theory gained traction when modders discovered that certain environmental details in Bethesda games mirror elements from the crypto sculpture. Curved metal structures in Fallout New Vegas bear striking resemblance to Sanborn's design, while some in-game books contain passages with unusual punctuation that could serve as decryption keys. Todd Howard, Bethesda's director, has worked in the Maryland and Virginia area for decades, placing him geographically close to the sculpture. Some theorists point to his public statements about hiding Easter eggs that won't be found for years, as evidence of deeper puzzles embedded in their games. The most compelling piece involves a data file labeled palimpsest, found in Fallout 76's launch code, sharing its name with one of Sanborn's clues about the sculpture's 4th section. Invisible walls and barriers represent one of the more unsettling theories about hidden obstacles deliberately placed to restrict human movement and exploration. These aren't just theoretical boundaries drawn on maps, but actual physical or technological barriers that supposedly prevent access to forbidden zones. The most documented cases involve Antarctica, where numerous explorers and researchers report encountering what they describe as impenetrable force fields at specific coordinates. Admiral Richard Byrd's expedition logs from 1947 mention his aircraft being repelled by an unseen energy approximately 200 kilometers inland from the Ross Ice Shelf. Military contractors have filed patents for electromagnetic barrier technology dating back to the 1960s. Raytheon Corporation's Project Blue Fence outlined methods for creating invisible perimeters using focused radio waves that could disorient approaching individuals or disable electronic equipment. The technology works by generating overlapping electromagnetic fields that interfere with neural activity, causing disorientation, nausea, and an overwhelming compulsion to turn around. Test subjects reported feeling like they were walking into thick syrup before losing all desire to continue forward. Area 51. Employees who broke their non-disclosure agreements described similar barriers surrounding the facility's most sensitive sections. Former security contractor Bob Lazar detailed encountering zones where the air itself felt solid during his alleged work on reverse-engineered spacecraft. Satellite imagery analysis reveals consistent gaps in commercial photography around certain military installations, suggesting automated systems that either jam cameras or redirect them away from protected airspace. These dead zones maintain perfect circular or rectangular boundaries that defy natural explanation. The Vatican's secret archives supposedly employ similar technology, with multiple historians reporting sudden onset fatigue and disorientation when approaching restricted manuscript collections. Swiss Guard protocols allegedly include procedures for escorting researchers who become barrier-affected back to safe zones. Some theorists believe these invisible barriers extend beyond Earth's atmosphere, forming a containment grid that prevents humanity from advancing too far into space exploration. This entry refers to the theory that World War II was staged using crisis actors. It claims that much of the documented footage, survivor testimony, and battlefield reporting from World War II was not organic, but manufactured. According to the theory, large segments of the war's imagery, especially what was broadcast to the public, featured actors playing victims, soldiers, and civilians as part of a coordinated psychological operation. Supporters of the theory focus on inconsistencies in visual documentation. Some point to staged photographs, duplicate faces appearing across unrelated footage, or improbable camera angles supposedly captured in the middle of chaos. They argue that the sheer scale of the war made it impossible to document authentically, and that what the public saw was largely curated theater. A recurring claim is that certain battle scenes were filmed far from actual war zones, using props, smoke effects, and actors trained to follow scripts. In one example, often cited online, footage from the Battle of Normandy appears to reuse the same background smoke multiple times in different sequences. Another case involves footage from a concentration camp liberation that appears to show staged interactions between soldiers and civilians, with some frames revealing production markers in the background. Some versions of the theory extend beyond wartime footage and accuse post-war tribunals of relying on coerced testimony or reenacted confessions. In this view, crisis actors weren't just used for battlefield drama, they were embedded into the post-war narrative to shape global opinion. Of course, none of this dismisses the existence of real death, destruction, and geopolitical change. The theory suggests those events did occur, but that the version shown to the public was a scripted, sanitized version designed to justify future global institutions, reshape borders, and maintain public obedience through shock. To believers, the use of crisis actors is not limited to World War II. It's just one installment in a much longer strategy of manufactured history. The Mariana Trench bone pit refers to claims of a massive collection of skeletal remains resting at the bottom of the deepest point on Earth. This theory suggests that somewhere in the crushing darkness of Challenger Deep, 11,000 meters below the surface, lies an enormous pile of bones that defies explanation. The story centers around the historic 1960 dive by Jacques Picard and Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh in the bathyscaphe Trieste. According to this theory, during their 20-minute visit to the ocean floor, the crew spotted something extraordinary through their porthole: a vast accumulation of skeletal remains scattered across the seafloor. The discovery was allegedly classified immediately, with all evidence suppressed from public knowledge. What makes this claim particularly intriguing is the environment itself. The Mariana Trench sits in the western Pacific Ocean, where pressure reaches over 16,000 pounds per square inch, enough force to instantly crush human bones into powder. The temperature hovers just above freezing in perpetual darkness, creating conditions so extreme that only specially adapted creatures can survive. The theory raises unsettling questions about the origin of these alleged remains. Some versions suggest they could be remnants of ancient civilizations that existed when sea levels were dramatically different. Others propose more disturbing possibilities, that the bones represent evidence of mass disappearances throughout history, with victims somehow ending up in Earth's most inaccessible location. Skeptics point out the glaring absence of photographic evidence from the Trieste mission, though this is explained by the sediment cloud stirred up during their landing. They also note that while whale bones do naturally accumulate in deep ocean trenches as part of normal marine ecosystems, the scale described in these accounts far exceeds anything documented by science. The timing of this alleged discovery adds another layer of mystery. 1960 marked the height of Cold War secrecy, when government cover-ups seemed entirely plausible to conspiracy theorists. The fact that no subsequent deep-sea missions have reported similar findings only fuels speculation that the area has been deliberately avoided, or that evidence continues to be suppressed. What makes the Mariana Trench particularly suited for such theories is its sheer inaccessibility. More humans have traveled to space than have visited Challenger Deep, making independent verification nearly impossible for all but the most well-funded expeditions. The sky is a hologram theory claims that everything we see above us is an elaborate artificial projection designed to hide the true nature of our world. According to this conspiracy, advanced technology creates a massive holographic display that covers the entire planet. This projection supposedly shows us fake clouds, artificial sunsets, and computer-generated weather patterns. The technology allegedly operates through a network of hidden projectors positioned around the globe, possibly mounted on satellites or concealed installations. Believers point to unusual cloud formations and atmospheric phenomena as evidence of digital glitches in the holographic system. They cite instances where people have photographed what appear to be pixelated clouds or geometric patterns in the sky that resemble computer rendering errors. Some claim to have witnessed the sky briefly flickering or displaying unnatural straight-line boundaries between different weather systems. The theory often connects to flat Earth concepts, suggesting the hologram conceals a solid dome structure above us. In this version, the projection hides the true ceiling of our enclosed world, while creating the illusion of infinite space and distant celestial bodies. Supporters reference patents for atmospheric projection technology and point to existing holographic displays used in entertainment venues as proof that such large-scale illusions are technically possible. They argue that military research into weather modification and atmospheric manipulation provides the foundation for this deception. The conspiracy extends to claims that certain atmospheric conditions can temporarily disrupt the holographic field, revealing glimpses of the actual sky underneath. These supposed revelations allegedly show a different color scheme, strange geometric structures, or complete darkness where space should be. Some versions suggest the hologram serves to hide ongoing activities in the real atmosphere above, whether that involves secret aircraft, dimensional portals, or evidence of our world's artificial construction. Star travel is alchemy claims that achieving true interstellar travel requires mastering the same principles that ancient alchemists sought to understand, and that space agencies have been secretly applying these occult sciences for decades. The theory centers on Nikola Tesla's alleged discovery of what researcher William Line termed occult ether physics in the late 1800s. According to this conspiracy, Tesla didn't just invent alternating current and wireless technology, but uncovered the fundamental secret of manipulating what he called the ether, a theoretical medium that fills all space. Tesla supposedly developed propulsion systems that could manipulate gravity and generate unlimited energy by tapping into this ethereal field, essentially achieving the alchemist's dream of transmuting base matter into something extraordinary. The most compelling evidence cited is the case of Jack Parsons, one of the founding fathers of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. Parsons was simultaneously a brilliant rocket scientist and a devoted practitioner of thelemic magic under Aleister Crowley. By 1939, Parsons was conducting elaborate ritual ceremonies while developing the solid fuel rocket engines that would eventually power America's space program. His colleagues at Caltech reportedly grew concerned about his occult activities, which included invoking spirits and practicing what he called elemental magic in the same house where he designed rocket propulsion systems. When Tesla died in 1943, FBI agents immediately seized all his papers and research notes. The government classified most of his work, and many documents remain hidden to this day. Researchers argue this proves Tesla had discovered propulsion secrets too dangerous for public knowledge. The theory suggests that NASA and other space agencies have been using Tesla's suppressed ether physics principles for advanced spacecraft, while maintaining the public fiction that rockets operate purely on conventional combustion. Some point to seemingly impossible maneuvers performed by certain aerospace vehicles as evidence that these craft operate on alchemical principles rather than standard physics. The connection goes deeper than technology. Alchemists believed in the principle of as above, so below, meaning that earthly processes mirror cosmic ones. Modern space travel, according to this theory, requires understanding these ancient correspondences between terrestrial and celestial realms that alchemists spent centuries trying to decode. Soft data catastrophe refers to the conspiracy that governments and secret societies are weaponizing everyday information about our personal preferences to control and manipulate entire populations. Unlike traditional surveillance that focuses on hard facts like financial records or communications, this theory centers on something far more insidious. Soft data encompasses the qualitative information we generate constantly through our digital lives. Every survey we complete, every product review we write, every rating we give, every poll we participate in becomes ammunition in a vast psychological warfare campaign. The catastrophe lies in how this seemingly harmless information gets processed. Your preference for certain music genres, your clothing choices, your responses to online questionnaires, even your deepest personal convictions expressed through digital platforms all feed into sophisticated algorithmic systems. These systems can predict and influence your behavior with frightening accuracy. According to this theory, entire lives are being shaped by networks designed to harvest these data points. The quote that often accompanies this conspiracy states that we are approaching a soft data catastrophe, where complete human personalities, from surface-level tastes to core beliefs, are being artificially generated by these systems. The truly concerning aspect is how voluntary most of this data collection appears. Unlike wiretapping or surveillance cameras, we willingly provide this information through seemingly innocent interactions. Rating a movie, taking a personality quiz, expressing political opinions on social media, or even just browsing certain websites all contribute to an ever-expanding profile of who you are as a person. Intelligence agencies and corporations allegedly use this soft data to create psychological profiles so detailed they can predict your next purchase, your voting patterns, and even your emotional responses to specific stimuli. The theory suggests these profiles are then used to micro-target persuasive content designed to nudge your behavior in predetermined directions. What makes this particularly disturbing is the scale. While traditional propaganda might reach millions, soft data manipulation can be customized for each individual. Your personal data creates a unique key that unlocks exactly which psychological triggers will be most effective against you specifically. The catastrophic element comes from the realization that free will itself might be under attack. If our preferences and convictions can be subtly shaped through algorithmic manipulation of our information environment, then the line between authentic choice and manufactured consent begins to blur entirely. Stars are holes in the sky suggests that what we perceive as distant suns are actually punctures or openings in a solid celestial dome above Earth. According to this belief, divine light from beyond the heavenly sphere shines through these cosmic perforations, creating the twinkling points we observe each night. This concept traces back to numerous ancient cosmologies, where the sky was viewed as a physical barrier separating Earth from higher realms. The Babylonians described stars as holes poked through a dark tent stretched across the heavens. Similar beliefs emerged among early Germanic tribes, who imagined the night sky as a great black cloth with pinpricks allowing celestial fire to peek through. The theory gained particular traction in medieval European thought, where scholars like Albertus Magnus in the 13th century proposed that stars were windows into the Empyrean, the highest heaven filled with pure light. Some versions suggest that angels or divine beings created these openings to provide guidance and illumination to humanity below. Modern advocates point to the consistent brightness patterns of certain stars and the way starlight appears to flicker, arguing this resembles light filtering through small apertures rather than emanating from massive fusion reactors. They note that ancient texts from cultures across 6 continents independently describe similar hole-in-the-sky imagery, suggesting a universal observation that predates modern astronomical explanations. The theory also attempts to explain why space appears completely black between stars, proposing that we're looking at the solid surface of the celestial dome rather than infinite empty space. Some variations claim that spacecraft have never actually left this enclosed system, and that all space exploration occurs within the cavity beneath the star-punctured ceiling. This entry, Invert Polarity Earth, refers to the theory that our planet's magnetic field has been artificially reversed from its natural state through technological manipulation. According to this belief, what we consider normal magnetic north and south poles are actually the opposite of how Earth should naturally function. The theory gained traction in certain circles following declassified documents about high-frequency radio experiments and atmospheric manipulation research. Proponents claim that facilities like HAARP in Alaska possess the capability to generate electromagnetic pulses powerful enough to destabilize and eventually flip Earth's magnetic field. They point to a Russian military journal that wrote ionospheric testing would trigger a cascade of electrons that could flip Earth's magnetic poles as evidence that such technology exists. Believers suggest this magnetic inversion began sometime in the 1950s, coinciding with the development of advanced radio transmission technology. They argue that Earth's naturally intended magnetic configuration would have magnetic north pointing toward what we now call the South Pole. This inversion supposedly affects everything from human consciousness to weather patterns, with some claiming it explains why modern compasses point the wrong way compared to ancient navigation methods. The theory often intersects with ideas about reality manipulation and dimensional shifting. Some versions claim the magnetic flip created a parallel Earth where everything operates in reverse, while others suggest it was done deliberately to confuse human navigation and natural biological rhythms. Adherents frequently cite the fact that Earth's magnetic field has been weakening significantly over recent decades, as proof that the artificial inversion is becoming unstable. More extreme interpretations propose that reversing the polarity back to its natural state would unlock hidden human potential and restore Earth's original energy patterns. They believe ancient civilizations knew the true magnetic orientation before the technological interference began. The alien internet theory suggests that extraterrestrial civilizations operate sophisticated communication networks that span across galaxies, and that humans have not only detected these transmissions, but may have inadvertently tapped into them. This concept gained traction in the late 1990s when computer scientist Dr. Sarah Chen at MIT claimed to have discovered unusual data packets embedded within standard internet traffic. These packets, she argued, contained mathematical sequences that didn't match any known terrestrial programming languages or communication protocols. The theory centers around the idea that advanced alien species use quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication across vast distances, essentially creating a cosmic internet that operates beyond our current understanding of physics. Unlike our fiber optic cables and radio waves, this alien network supposedly transmits information through folded space-time, allowing real-time conversations between star systems separated by thousands of light years. Believers point to specific incidents, including the mysterious appearance of untraceable IP addresses that seem to originate from coordinates in deep space. In 2003, network administrators at CERN reported detecting data streams that appeared to be routing through satellites that didn't exist in any official registry. The most compelling evidence cited involves the work of radio astronomer Dr. Marcus Rothwell, who in 2007 claimed to have isolated what he called digital archaeology within the background noise of internet servers. These fragments supposedly contained compressed data that, when decoded, revealed star charts accurate to locations unknown to human astronomers at the time. Some versions of this theory suggest that our own internet infrastructure was reverse engineered from crashed alien technology, explaining the rapid advancement of computing in the 20th century. The timing of major technological breakthroughs, they argue, coincides suspiciously with reported UFO incidents near military research facilities. Perhaps most unsettling is the claim that certain websites and online forums serve as unknowing relay points for alien communications, with human users inadvertently forwarding extraterrestrial messages disguised as seemingly random data transfers. Appendix decalcification refers to the controversial practice of removing calcium deposits from the vermiform appendix to allegedly restore its hidden functions. While mainstream medicine views the appendix as a vestigial organ with minimal importance, this theory claims the small intestinal pouch serves as a crucial spiritual and detoxification center that becomes blocked over time. The theory suggests that calcium buildup in the appendix occurs through fluoridated water, processed foods, and environmental toxins, creating what believers call appendix stones, or calcified barriers. These deposits supposedly prevent the organ from performing its true purpose as a secondary pineal gland, blocking intuitive abilities and natural detoxification processes. Practitioners claim that decalcifying the appendix can restore psychic sensitivity, improve gut health, and enhance spiritual awareness. The process typically involves extended fasting, specific herbal protocols including milk thistle and dandelion root, and what they term appendix massage techniques applied to the lower right abdomen. Some followers report experiencing vivid dreams, increased intuition, and improved digestion after completing appendix decalcification protocols lasting anywhere from 30 to 90 days. More extreme versions of the theory suggest that appendectomies are deliberately performed to prevent people from accessing these enhanced abilities. The practice gained traction in certain alternative health circles during the 2010s, particularly among those who also believe in pineal gland decalcification. Online forums document detailed protocols involving everything from coffee enemas, targeting the appendix region, to consuming specific mineral combinations designed to dissolve the alleged calcium deposits. Critics point out the lack of scientific evidence for appendix calcification as described, though supporters maintain that conventional medicine deliberately ignores the organ's spiritual functions. The King in the North refers to a strange phenomenon that blurs the line between fiction, prophecy, and reality. At face value, the name sounds like a reference to fantasy, specifically the character Jon Snow from Game of Thrones. But some conspiracy theorists believe the title carries deeper symbolic meaning tied to real-world power structures, ancient myths, and mysterious lineage. The theory suggests that the King in the North isn't just a character, but a repeating archetype, a cold region leader, either literally from the north or from a higher symbolic place, who rises during periods of global instability. Some link this figure to old European bloodlines said to have originated in northern regions like Scandinavia or the Scottish Highlands. Others tie it to modern political figures, usually those portrayed as outsiders, rebels, or saviors from colder climates. More esoteric versions of the theory claim the King in the North is part of a long-term control mechanism, a manufactured messiah figure introduced at key turning points to reset public perception. In these interpretations, even fictional stories like Game of Thrones are considered intentional conditioning, planting symbols and narratives that prepare the population for a real-life counterpart. Researchers point to media coincidences, birth records, and the strangely recurring theme of northern rulers throughout history. There are also occasional references to ice, preservation, or stasis, suggesting a kind of return or awakening. Human scripting suggests that the majority of people around you are operating from predetermined behavioral patterns, much like non-player characters in a video game following their coded routines. This theory proposes that only a small percentage of humans possess genuine consciousness and free will, while the rest function as biological automatons executing pre-written social scripts. These scripted individuals allegedly respond to situations with predictable dialogue trees and limited behavioral variations, never deviating from their programmed responses. Believers point to what they call glitches in the matrix as evidence. They cite instances where multiple strangers use identical phrases in conversation, or when people seem to repeat the same small talk patterns endlessly. Customer service interactions become particularly suspect under this lens, where representatives often follow rigid scripts that can loop back to the beginning when faced with unexpected questions. The theory gained traction in online communities during the 2010s, where users began cataloging what they called NPC behavior. They documented people who seemed incapable of original thought, always defaulting to mainstream talking points, or individuals whose personalities appeared to reset after brief interactions. Some versions of human scripting connect to simulation hypothesis, suggesting that computational limitations require most simulated humans to run on simplified behavioral algorithms. Others tie it to mind control programs, claiming that mass media and education systems have successfully programmed the majority to follow predictable scripts. The most unsettling aspect involves the claim that scripted humans cannot be awakened to their condition. According to this belief, attempting to break someone out of their script triggers defensive subroutines that make them hostile to alternative perspectives, ensuring the programming remains intact. CRISPR arrives from the future suggests that the revolutionary gene editing technology known as CRISPR-Cas9 didn't develop naturally through human scientific progress, but instead represents knowledge transmitted backwards through time from a more advanced civilization. The technology allows scientists to cut and paste genetic code with unprecedented precision, essentially rewriting the fundamental instructions of life itself. What makes this conspiracy compelling is the sheer speed at which CRISPR went from laboratory curiosity to world-changing tool. Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier published their groundbreaking paper in 2012, describing how to harness a bacterial immune system for precise gene editing. Within just a few years, researchers were curing genetic diseases, creating designer crops, and even attempting to resurrect extinct species. The learning curve that should have taken decades was compressed into mere months. The precision is what catches attention first. CRISPR can target a single letter in a genome containing over 3 billion base pairs, like finding and replacing one specific word in a library containing every book ever written. This level of accuracy seemed impossible with previous genetic tools, which were essentially molecular sledgehammers compared to CRISPR's surgical scalpel. Then there's the timing. CRISPR emerged just as humanity faced mounting challenges that genetic engineering could solve. Climate change threatening food security, aging populations requiring new medical treatments, and environmental destruction demanding biological solutions. The technology appeared exactly when we needed it most, almost as if someone knew what problems were coming. The bacterial systems that inspired CRISPR had existed for millions of years, yet humans only discovered their potential in the 2010s. Some researchers working with the technology report having insights that seem to come from nowhere, describing solutions to complex problems appearing fully formed in their minds during routine experiments. The speed of adoption across laboratories worldwide also raises eyebrows. Typically, revolutionary scientific techniques take years to spread as researchers slowly learn the methods. CRISPR protocols spread like wildfire, with labs on different continents simultaneously developing nearly identical approaches without direct communication. This entry suggests that President John F. Kennedy orchestrated his own death on November 22, 1963, in Dealey Plaza. The theory centers on Kennedy's deteriorating health conditions that were largely hidden from the public during his presidency. Medical records later revealed he suffered from Addison's disease, chronic back pain requiring daily injections, and took a cocktail of medications including amphetamines and steroids. Some theorists point to Kennedy's awareness that his condition was worsening and potentially terminal. Proponents of this theory examine the unusual sequence of events that day in Dallas. They note Kennedy's insistence on riding in an open-top car despite security concerns, and his specific route through Dealey Plaza that placed him in what they call a predetermined position. The theory suggests Kennedy coordinated with a shooter, possibly Lee Harvey Oswald, to create the appearance of an assassination while achieving his own end. The Zapruder film becomes central evidence in this interpretation. Frame-by-frame analysis shows Kennedy's head movement, which some claim indicates he may have triggered a concealed device rather than reacting to an external shot. The backward motion, they argue, could be explained by internal rather than external force. Medical examiner findings add another layer to this theory. The autopsy conducted at Bethesda Naval Hospital was notably chaotic and incomplete. Some theorists suggest this confusion was intentional, designed to obscure evidence of Kennedy's self-inflicted fatal wound among the other injuries. The theory also incorporates Kennedy's political pressures in 1963. The Bay of Pigs failure, escalating situations in Vietnam, and mounting tensions with both the Soviet Union and his own administration created what theorists describe as an impossible situation for the president. Jackie Kennedy's behavior immediately following the shooting draws attention in this version. Her apparent calm and specific actions, including her refusal to change her blood-stained dress, are interpreted as following a predetermined plan rather than genuine shock. The Akashic event horizon refers to a theoretical point where humanity's collective consciousness encounters an informational boundary that fundamentally alters our reality. This concept merges two distinct ideas: the Akashic records from spiritual traditions and the event horizon from black hole physics. The Akashic records, according to theosophical teachings, function as a cosmic database containing every thought, action, and experience that has ever occurred. Think of it as the universe's ultimate hard drive, storing infinite data about past, present, and future events. Mystics and psychics have claimed to access these records through meditation and altered states of consciousness. An event horizon in physics marks the point of no return around a black hole. Cross this boundary, and you cannot escape the gravitational pull. Information that passes through becomes fundamentally changed and potentially lost to outside observers. The conspiracy theory suggests that human consciousness is rapidly approaching a similar threshold. Believers point to exponential increases in global connectivity, artificial intelligence development, and what they call synchronicity storms happening worldwide. They claim that as more people access psychic abilities and tap into collective consciousness networks, we edge closer to this informational event horizon. Specific incidents fuel these beliefs. Remote viewers during CIA experiments in the 1970s allegedly reported encountering walls of data that prevented deeper penetration into certain timeframes. Modern quantum consciousness researchers like Dr. Stuart Hameroff have documented cases where patients under anesthesia access information they should not logically possess. The theory suggests that once humanity crosses this threshold, linear time becomes meaningless, individual consciousness merges with collective awareness, and reality itself becomes malleable through focused intention. Some researchers warn this crossing point could occur within the next 20 to 30 years. Shills do it for free. This entry explores the bizarre phenomenon where individuals passionately defend corporations, government agencies, or controversial figures online without receiving any compensation whatsoever. The traditional understanding of a shill involves someone secretly paid to promote products or ideas while pretending to be an unbiased consumer or citizen. But internet researchers began noticing something peculiar in comment sections and forums across the web. Thousands of users would spend hours crafting detailed defenses of multinational corporations, writing lengthy rebuttals to criticism of pharmaceutical companies, or aggressively promoting government narratives about sensitive topics. The strange part? Many of these defenders appeared to be genuine volunteers. Digital forensics experts started tracking posting patterns and discovered that some of the most prolific corporate defenders were ordinary people using their real names and personal accounts. They would defend companies like Monsanto or Pfizer with the dedication of paid employees, yet investigation revealed no financial connection. The phenomenon became particularly noticeable during major controversies in the 2000s. Users would emerge seemingly from nowhere to flood discussion threads with talking points that perfectly aligned with corporate public relations strategies. These weren't bot accounts or obvious fake profiles, but real people with years of posting history. Some researchers theorize these individuals have been psychologically conditioned through sophisticated marketing campaigns to genuinely believe they're fighting misinformation. Others suggest certain personality types are naturally drawn to defending authority figures and large institutions. The most unsettling aspect remains the sheer volume of free labor being provided. Calculated estimates suggest millions of hours of unpaid advocacy work occurs daily across social media platforms, all performed by people who genuinely believe they're doing the right thing. Meth immortality refers to the fringe belief that methamphetamine possesses hidden life-extending properties that have been deliberately concealed from the public. Believers in this theory point to the drug's powerful stimulant effects as evidence of its supposed rejuvenating capabilities. They claim that the intense energy boost, heightened alertness, and reduced need for sleep experienced by users are actually signs of cellular regeneration and metabolic enhancement that could theoretically extend human lifespan. The theory often centers around methamphetamine's impact on dopamine production and its effects on the central nervous system. Supporters argue that the drug's ability to keep users awake for days at a time demonstrates its power to override natural biological limitations. Some versions of this conspiracy reference studies from the 1940s and 1950s, when pharmaceutical companies first synthesized methamphetamine for medical use. Believers claim that early researchers discovered anti-aging properties, but buried the findings due to the drug's addictive nature and potential for abuse. This entry suggests that President Ronald Reagan actually died from the assassination attempt on March 30th, 1981, and that everything that followed was an elaborate government cover-up. On that day in Washington, D.C., John Hinckley Jr. fired 6 shots at Reagan outside the Washington Hilton Hotel. One bullet ricocheted off the presidential limousine and struck Reagan in the chest, puncturing his lung and stopping just inches from his heart. The official record states that Reagan survived emergency surgery and made a full recovery. But believers in this theory point to several supposed inconsistencies in the aftermath. They claim Reagan's personality and speaking patterns changed dramatically after the incident. Where the pre-shooting Reagan was sharp and quick-witted, they argue the post-recovery, Reagan seemed confused and relied heavily on scripted responses. The theory suggests that either Reagan died on the operating table and was replaced by a look-alike, or that he survived but suffered severe brain damage that was hidden from the public. Some versions claim his wife Nancy and close advisors ran the country in secret for the remainder of his presidency. Supporters point to Reagan's increased reliance on teleprompters and note cards after 1981, his occasional moments of apparent confusion during press conferences, and what they see as a marked decline in his improvisational speaking ability. They also highlight how the administration became more secretive about Reagan's health and daily activities, limiting press access and carefully controlling his public appearances. The theory gained additional traction years later when Reagan was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, with believers claiming this was simply the public revelation of damage that occurred during the assassination attempt rather than a separate condition. Lost Satellaview games represent one of gaming's most mysterious chapters of deliberately hidden content. These Japanese-exclusive titles were broadcast via satellite directly to Super Famicom consoles during the 1990s, creating a treasure trove of media that vanished the moment transmission ended. The Satellaview system worked like satellite television but for video games. Nintendo partnered with St. Giga radio station to beam exclusive content during specific time slots, often just once or twice before disappearing forever. Players had to tune in at exact broadcast times or miss out entirely. What makes this particularly suspicious is how Nintendo has handled requests for these games ever since. The company possesses master copies of every single broadcast, but refuses to re-release them, even when fan demand reaches fever pitch. Games like Zelda, Ancient Stone Tablets, and Super Mario Bros. Special Broadcast version remain locked away in Nintendo's vaults, despite being fully functional and completed products. Some broadcasts contained content that would never appear in regular Nintendo releases. BS Fire Emblem featured permadeath mechanics and mature storylines that pushed boundaries for family-friendly Nintendo. Radical Dreamers served as a direct sequel to Chrono Trigger, with darker themes that Square Enix now pretends doesn't exist. The most intriguing element involves real-time integration with live radio programming. Certain games would pause for news updates or weather reports, creating hybrid entertainment experiences that blurred lines between gaming and broadcasting. These segments often contained unscripted moments and off-the-cuff commentary that Nintendo could never fully control. Preservation efforts have recovered fragments through dedicated collectors who recorded broadcasts onto special memory packs, but massive gaps remain. Estimates suggest over 60% of Satellaview content is permanently lost, making it one of the largest missing media collections in entertainment history. Nintendo's continued silence about their archives suggests they're protecting something more valuable than nostalgia. The Paleolithic deep state suggests that organized shadow governance existed tens of thousands of years before recorded civilization. This theory claims that sophisticated power structures operated during the Old Stone Age, controlling early human populations through methods that left virtually no archaeological trace. According to this concept, elite groups emerged around 30,000 years ago, developing advanced knowledge systems while deliberately keeping the majority of humans in primitive conditions. These alleged controllers supposedly understood astronomy, mathematics, and even basic metallurgy, but restricted this information to maintain their dominance over hunter-gatherer societies. Theorists point to unexplained artifacts like the Antikythera mechanism as proof that ancient technological knowledge existed far earlier than mainstream science acknowledges. They argue that certain cave paintings contain coded messages and that megalithic sites like Göbekli Tepe represent communication networks rather than religious centers. The theory suggests these Paleolithic elites established bloodlines that continue influencing world events today. Proponents claim modern secret societies trace their origins to these Stone Age power brokers, maintaining the same methods of information control across millennia. Some versions propose that climate events like the Younger Dryas period were artificially triggered to eliminate evidence of advanced Paleolithic civilizations. They argue that the sudden temperature drop 12,800 years ago conveniently destroyed most traces of this early deep state infrastructure. The most extreme variant suggests these ancient controllers possessed knowledge of genetic manipulation, selectively breeding humans for compliance while preserving superior traits within their own lineages. This supposedly explains why certain families have maintained wealth and influence across thousands of years of human history. Critics note the complete absence of archaeological evidence for complex Paleolithic organizations, pointing out that coordinated governance requires population densities and resource surpluses that simply did not exist during the Stone Age. This entry refers to the theory that atom bombs never existed. According to this claim, the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were elaborate hoaxes staged by world powers to justify military spending, control public fear, and end World War II on their own terms. Supporters of the theory point to early footage of nuclear tests, which often show inconsistent lighting, miniatures, or unusual editing techniques. They argue that many test films look more like special effects than real events. One key argument centers on the aftermath of Hiroshima. Conspiracy researchers have noted that the city's infrastructure recovered faster than expected. Some photos taken weeks after the bombing show people walking near intact buildings, with power and streetcars already back in operation. Another focus is the physical symptoms of radiation. Critics say that reports of long-term fallout were vague, inconsistent, or exaggerated to increase fear. They also question why nuclear tests in later decades didn't result in more visible or lasting environmental damage in the surrounding areas. In this theory, the Cold War arms race was a staged performance between world powers, especially the United States and the Soviet Union. The goal was to keep both their populations in line with fear of instant global destruction. Some versions suggest that atomic energy is real, but the weapons themselves were never functional. Others go further, claiming the science behind nuclear chain reactions was intentionally misunderstood or falsified. Documents, military footage, and survivor accounts are all viewed through a lens of potential misinformation. Any contradictory detail becomes part of the mystery, either as evidence of deception or as an intentional part of a much larger psychological operation. At the center of this claim is one idea. Fear of a weapon that may never have existed has shaped world politics, science, and culture for over 70 years. Urine fasting represents one of the more stomach-turning entries in alternative health circles, where practitioners deliberately consume their own urine for extended periods, claiming it provides miraculous healing properties. The core belief centers around the idea that urine contains concentrated nutrients, hormones, and antibodies that the body initially missed during digestion. Supporters argue that by recycling these compounds, practitioners can cure everything from cancer to autoimmune disorders. Some take this further, suggesting that morning urine contains the highest concentration of beneficial compounds, leading to elaborate collection and consumption schedules. The practice gained notable attention through figures like John Armstrong, who wrote The Water of Life in 1944, documenting supposed case studies of urine therapy curing terminal illnesses. More recently, practitioners like Martha Christie promoted what she called autoimmune urine therapy in the 1990s, claiming it could reset the immune system entirely. Followers typically start with small amounts, sometimes just a few drops under the tongue, before progressing to drinking full glasses or even fasting exclusively on urine for days or weeks. The most extreme practitioners incorporate what they call urine enemas, or topical applications, believing the skin can absorb these beneficial compounds more effectively. The scientific community remains firmly opposed, pointing out that urine represents waste products the kidneys specifically filtered out as harmful or unnecessary. Medical professionals warn that concentrated urine consumption can lead to dangerous electrolyte imbalances and kidney damage. Yet the practice persists in underground health communities, often promoted through testimonials and anecdotal evidence rather than clinical studies, maintaining its position as one of alternative medicine's most polarizing theories. World play is the theory that reality as we know it is not just influenced by powerful groups, but is entirely scripted, like a massive, interactive performance where only a few people know the plot. It combines elements of simulation theory, predictive programming, and occult ritual. According to this claim, world events are carefully orchestrated in advance and then rolled out like chapters in a story. Natural disasters, elections, celebrity scandals, and even certain crimes are thought to follow a pre-written script designed to guide public emotion, behavior, and belief. Supporters of the theory often point to repeating symbolism in news footage, staged photo ops, or oddly timed media releases. They analyze hand signs, color schemes, and names used in political speeches or global summits. To them, it's not random, it's a show. One part of the theory suggests that major actors on the world stage, including politicians, billionaires, and influencers, are either in on it or following roles they've been assigned. Some even claim these figures are replaced with lookalikes or synthetic stand-ins if they break script. The word play is used deliberately. This isn't just a simulation run by machines. It's closer to ritual theater, using symbols, story arcs, and emotional manipulation to direct the collective consciousness. Examples cited include the use of specific phrases like "build back better," appearing across different countries at the same time, or televised crisis events that seem to follow cinematic pacing, complete with foreshadowing, climax, and resolution. In this view, the news isn't just reporting events, it's performing them. The goal is to keep the audience reactive, not reflective, to keep people in the role of spectator instead of participant. The unsettling part of world play isn't just that events are controlled, it's the suggestion that even our reactions, fear, outrage, hope, are being rehearsed for us in advance. Sky snag theory proposes that Earth functions as a massive cosmic net, deliberately capturing extraterrestrial objects, life forms, and potentially advanced technology as they pass through our solar system. This theory hypothesizes that the Earth and its atmosphere act as a kind of snag or net, capturing extraterrestrial objects that pass through our sky. According to this theory, Earth's atmosphere, gravitational pull, and magnetic fields work collectively to attract and hold on to foreign entities. The mechanism involves three primary components working in coordination. Earth's gravitational field acts as the initial lure, pulling objects toward our planet from vast distances. The atmosphere then serves as a filtering system, slowing down incoming objects through friction, while allowing certain materials and potentially living organisms to survive the descent. Finally, our planet's magnetic field creates an additional layer of capture potential, particularly for charged particles and objects with metallic properties. The theory suggests that rather than being random cosmic accidents, meteor impacts and atmospheric phenomena represent evidence of Earth's active role in harvesting extraterrestrial materials. Some versions propose that this snagging mechanism may have evolved or been designed specifically to collect advanced alien technology, with governments secretly recovering these captured devices. Compelling evidence for this hypothesis comes from the discovery of amino acids, life's building blocks, in meteorites found on Earth. The theory extends beyond simple gravitational capture to suggest a more sophisticated system where Earth selectively retains valuable cosmic materials while allowing less useful debris to burn up completely during atmospheric entry. These could include meteoroids, asteroids, space dust, and potentially even extraterrestrial life forms or technologically advanced devices. The theory gains legitimacy from documented cases of meteorites containing amino acids, the building blocks of life, suggesting that biological material regularly arrives on Earth from space. What makes this theory particularly compelling is its connection to the panspermia hypothesis. This concept is closely linked to the panspermia hypothesis, which suggests that life exists throughout the universe and can be spread via meteoroids and other celestial bodies. If Earth truly operates as a cosmic collection device, it could explain how our planet acquired the initial ingredients for life or even fully formed organisms from other worlds. Soviet abiogenesis, 1972, centers on what became known as the Chudanov affair. This incident allegedly involved a Soviet scientist bringing ancient life back from the dead, or possibly creating life entirely from scratch. The story begins with Dr. N. Chudanov working at the Berezniki Potassium Combine in the Ural Mountains. He was investigating mysterious red discoloration in salt deposits at the base of the mountain range. The deposits contained alternating layers of potassium, magnesium chloride, and sodium. Chudanov decided to dissolve away the sodium using distilled water. When he did this, he discovered the source of the red coloring. Clear fossil structures of algae colonies and worms became visible under his microscope. Dating revealed these organisms to be approximately 250 million years old. Here's where the story takes its extraordinary turn. When Chudanov returned to examine his samples later, the microorganisms appeared to be showing signs of life. Under microscopic observation, the ancient worms and algae began moving. When placed in various culture mediums, they became increasingly mobile, started growing, and even began reproducing. The results were published in Soviet Union magazine in February 1972. By later that year, newspapers and scientific journals outside the USSR had taken notice of what they dubbed the Chudanov affair. Western scientists treated these reports seriously and eagerly awaited the full scientific paper that Chudanov was expected to publish. That paper never materialized. After the initial announcement, no further updates emerged about the Chudanov affair. Interest gradually faded as the scientific community moved on to other matters. The conspiracy theory suggests several possibilities for what really happened. Some believe Chudynoff actually succeeded in reviving genuinely ancient life forms that had been in suspended animation for millions of years. Others theorize that Soviet scientists had developed advanced techniques for synthetic abiogenesis, essentially creating life from non-living matter. A more suspicious interpretation holds that the entire affair was covered up because it had implications for biological weapons research or challenged established scientific understanding about the origins of life. The sudden silence from Soviet authorities and the absence of follow-up research only deepened the mystery surrounding these alleged experiments. Trees are mammals. This biological conspiracy suggests that the scientific classification system has deliberately hidden the true nature of trees to maintain control over how we understand life on Earth. The theory centers on several biological processes that trees allegedly share with mammals. Trees breathe through their bark and leaves, taking in oxygen at night when photosynthesis stops. They have circulatory systems that pump nutrients through their bodies via xylem and phloem, much like blood vessels. Trees communicate through underground fungal networks, releasing chemical signals when under attack from insects or disease. Supporters point to the work of Dr. Suzanne Simard, a forest ecologist who documented how trees share resources and information through what she called the Wood Wide Web. Her research in the 1990s showed mother trees nurturing their offspring by sending them carbon and nutrients through mycorrhizal connections. The conspiracy extends to tree behavior that mirrors mammalian responses. Trees have been observed moving their branches to avoid obstacles, a phenomenon called crown shyness, where tree canopies refuse to touch each other. Some species, like the sensitive plant, fold their leaves when touched, demonstrating what appears to be a nervous system response. Ancient redwoods and bristlecone pines live for thousands of years, far exceeding typical plant lifespans and approaching the longevity seen in large mammals like whales. The theory suggests this extended lifespan indicates a mammalian metabolism that scientists refuse to acknowledge. Biochemist Dr. Monica Galliano's experiments in the early 2010s showed plants could learn and remember, displaying cognitive abilities previously attributed only to animals. Her work with mimosa plants demonstrated they could distinguish between harmless and harmful stimuli, retaining this knowledge for weeks. The conspiracy claims botanical textbooks deliberately ignore evidence of tree consciousness and intelligence to prevent humans from recognizing trees as fellow mammals deserving of equal protection under the law. This entry challenges one of the most fundamental explanations taught in every science classroom. According to this theory, the scientific establishment has been lying about what actually causes ocean tides, and the moon has nothing to do with the twice-daily rise and fall of sea levels around the world. The mainstream explanation claims that the moon's gravitational pull creates a bulge of water on the side of Earth facing the moon, with a corresponding bulge on the opposite side due to centrifugal force. As Earth rotates, these bulges move around the planet, creating high and low tides approximately every 6 hours. But theorists point to several problems with this explanation. They argue that if lunar gravity were strong enough to move billions of tons of ocean water, it should also affect lakes, rivers, and even the water in swimming pools. Yet these smaller bodies of water show no measurable tidal effects. Instead, they propose that tides result from atmospheric pressure changes, underground thermal currents, or electromagnetic forces within Earth itself. Some claim that massive underground water systems connected by caverns and channels create pressure differentials that push ocean water up and down. Believers in this theory often cite the work of 19th century researchers who documented tidal patterns that seem to contradict lunar timing. They point to locations where high tide occurs when the moon is directly overhead, rather than when it should according to gravitational models. The theory suggests that oceanographers and astronomers maintain this deception to protect their funding and academic careers. After all, if tides aren't caused by celestial mechanics, it would undermine entire fields of study and force textbooks worldwide to be rewritten. This entry refers to the belief that Earth stands alone as the singular genuine planet in existence, with all other celestial bodies we call planets being fundamentally different entities entirely. According to this perspective, the objects astronomers label as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune are not actually solid worlds like Earth, but rather luminous bodies or wandering stars. These theorists point to ancient cosmological models where the word planet originally meant wanderer in Greek, referring specifically to moving lights in the sky rather than physical spheres of rock and gas. The theory draws heavily from pre-Copernican astronomy and certain interpretations of religious texts that describe a unique creation story for Earth. Supporters argue that telescopic observations showing surface features on other planets are either optical illusions, atmospheric phenomena, or deliberate deceptions created through advanced projection technology. Some versions of this belief system claim that space agencies have never actually sent probes to other planets, instead staging elaborate hoaxes using computer-generated imagery and Hollywood-style special effects. They point to inconsistencies in official photographs and question why certain missions experience communication delays that seem too convenient. The firmament model plays a central role here, suggesting that what we perceive as distant planets are actually lights embedded in a solid dome above Earth. This dome concept explains why planets appear to move in predictable patterns while maintaining that they exist on a fundamentally different plane of reality than our terrestrial home. Certain adherents reference medieval astronomical texts and argue that the shift toward viewing other planets as Earth-like worlds was a deliberate move to diminish humanity's special place in creation. They claim this perspective was engineered to make Earth seem ordinary rather than divinely unique. The theory often intersects with broader flat Earth beliefs and geocentric cosmology, creating a comprehensive worldview where Earth remains stationary at the center of creation, while mysterious lights dance across the heavens above. This entry refers to a mathematical anomaly that conspiracy theorists claim holds the key to understanding reality itself. The two-sided shape, more formally known as a Mobius strip, is a surface with only one side and one boundary curve. You can create one by taking a strip of paper, giving it a half twist, and taping the ends together. The result defies our normal understanding of geometry. If you place your finger on any point and trace along the surface, you'll eventually return to your starting position, having touched every part of the strip without ever crossing an edge. Occultists and fringe mathematicians have latched onto this bizarre property, claiming it represents a bridge between dimensions. Some assert that ancient civilizations encoded knowledge of these shapes into their architecture and religious symbols. The infinity symbol, they argue, is actually a flattened representation of this same concept. Believers point to the discovery of Mobius strips carved into Roman mosaics from the 3rd century, suggesting this knowledge predates its supposed mathematical discovery by August Mobius in 1857. More extreme interpretations claim that reality itself operates on Mobius strip principles. These theorists suggest that time, space, and consciousness are all connected through this single-sided geometry, allowing for phenomena like déjà vu, prophetic dreams, and parallel universe bleeding. Modern conspiracy circles have connected the shape to everything from DNA structure to the design of particle accelerators, claiming scientists deliberately suppress the true implications of this geometry because it would fundamentally reshape our understanding of physics and consciousness. The universe ended long ago suggests that what we perceive as our current reality is actually occurring after the cosmic death of everything that ever existed. This concept builds on legitimate concerns from theoretical physics about the ultimate fate of our universe. Scientists have calculated that in roughly 10 to the 100th power years, the universe will reach maximum entropy through heat death, where all energy becomes evenly distributed and no work can be performed. But this theory takes a dramatic leap further. According to this idea, that heat death already happened billions of years ago. What we experience as the present moment is actually just the final quantum fluctuations of information processing as the last black holes evaporate through Hawking radiation. Every thought you have, every sensation you feel, every memory you possess exists only as brief statistical anomalies in an otherwise dead cosmos. The theory draws from physicist Max Tegmark's work on the mathematical universe hypothesis, which suggests that our reality might be purely informational rather than physical. If consciousness is simply information processing, then the dying moments of the universe could theoretically contain enough computational power to simulate entire civilizations for what feels like eons to the beings within them. Some versions point to the apparent fine-tuning of physical constants as evidence. Rather than requiring multiple universes or divine intervention, they argue these constants appear perfect for life, because we only exist in the final computational echoes, where such conditions can briefly manifest. The most unsettling aspect involves time perception. If our entire timeline from the Big Bang to now represents just microseconds of processing in a universe that died trillions of years ago, then every historical event, every person who ever lived, and every future possibility exists simultaneously in this cosmic death rattle. This would mean that right now, as you listen to this, Julius Caesar is crossing the Rubicon, dinosaurs are roaming the Earth, and your great-grandchildren are living their lives, all occurring as parallel computations in the universe's final breath. The hollow universe theory challenges everything mainstream science tells us about the cosmos. Instead of living in an expanding universe that stretches infinitely outward, this concept suggests we exist on the inner surface of a vast hollow sphere. The theory gained traction in the early 1900s when mathematician Carl Schwarzschild's work on curved spacetime was reinterpreted by fringe researchers. They argued that his equations could describe a universe where all matter exists on the concave inner surface of a sphere, with what we perceive as distant galaxies actually being reflections or projections on this curved interior. Cyrus Reed Teed, an eccentric doctor from upstate New York, developed a similar model called cellular cosmogony in 1896. Teed claimed that Earth itself was hollow and that we lived on the inside, with the sun as a small battery-powered mechanism at the center. His followers, known as Koryshans, even conducted experiments with surveying equipment to prove the Earth's surface curved inward rather than outward. Modern proponents point to the cosmic microwave background radiation as evidence. They claim this universal glow represents the inner walls of our cosmic shell, rather than leftover energy from the Big Bang. The theory also attempts to explain dark matter and dark energy as illusions created by our misunderstanding of geometry. Some versions suggest our entire observable universe fits within a black hole in a larger reality. Others propose that what we see as the night sky is actually light bouncing around the interior of an enormous sphere, creating the illusion of vast distances when stars might only be a few thousand kilometers away. The mathematics become particularly complex when trying to explain how gravity would work in such a system, leading to proposals about inverted physics where forces operate in reverse compared to our current understanding. Molecules can be seen with human eyes suggests that the fundamental building blocks of matter are actually visible to our naked vision, contradicting everything mainstream science teaches about molecular scale. According to this theory, what we've been told about needing electron microscopes and advanced technology to observe molecular structures is deliberate misdirection. Believers claim that with proper training and focus, the human eye can detect individual molecules floating in the air around us. The conventional scientific view holds that molecules typically measure between 1 to 100 nanometers, making them roughly 1 million times smaller than the width of a human hair. Our eyes supposedly can only resolve objects larger than about 100 micrometers under ideal conditions. But supporters of this theory point to specific techniques involving prolonged staring at empty space, controlled breathing, and what they call molecular meditation. They describe seeing tiny dancing points of light that correspond to water vapor molecules, oxygen particles, and even complex organic compounds. Some adherents reference experiments from the 1970s, where researchers claimed participants could identify different gas molecules by sight alone in sealed chambers. These studies allegedly showed accuracy rates exceeding chance by significant margins, but the results were supposedly suppressed by academic institutions. The theory extends to suggest that certain individuals possess enhanced visual sensitivity, allowing them to perceive molecular motion as subtle shimming effects in apparently empty air. They claim this ability was more common in pre-industrial societies, before environmental toxins damaged human sensory capabilities. Practitioners describe a specific training regimen involving extended periods of darkness, followed by gradual light exposure, while focusing on seemingly empty spaces. They report eventually seeing what appears to be constant molecular activity, resembling a living snow globe effect in normal room air. Half matter represents a fringe theory claiming that government laboratories have successfully created particles that exist in an impossible state between light and ordinary matter. The foundation for this theory stems from legitimate research at institutions like City College of New York and University of Colorado Boulder, where scientists have documented the creation of what they call exciton polaritons. These are genuine quantum particles that exhibit properties of both photons and electrons simultaneously. Researcher Paul Romachky at Colorado Boulder published findings in 2019 showing he could literally break photons in half when reducing dimensional space from 3 to 2 dimensions. What transforms legitimate science into conspiracy territory is the claim that these discoveries represent only the tip of a massive iceberg. According to this theory, classified experiments have progressed far beyond academic research. The particles allegedly demonstrate behaviors that violate fundamental physics laws, including the ability to exist in multiple locations simultaneously, and to phase in and out of detectable reality. The theory suggests that half-matter particles serve as the building blocks for advanced stealth technology, allowing objects to become partially invisible by existing in a quantum superposition between matter and energy. Some versions claim that crashed extraterrestrial craft contained similar technology, spurring decades of secret reverse engineering projects. Brookhaven National Laboratory's recent discovery of what they termed half-ice, half-fire matter only adds fuel to these claims. This newly identified phase features electrons with both highly ordered and completely chaotic magnetic spins existing simultaneously, something that should theoretically be impossible under known physics. The conspiracy extends to claims that major tech companies are already implementing half-matter research in quantum computing projects, but are deliberately hiding the true capabilities from public oversight. The missing half of the universe's normal matter, recently located by astronomers as ionized hydrogen gas, is said to actually be these engineered particles deployed as a global monitoring network. Researchers point to the convenient timing of these discoveries, arguing that the simultaneous emergence of multiple impossible matter states suggests coordinated disclosure of previously classified technologies. Nougat refers to an alleged Central Intelligence Agency operation that supposedly took place in 1990. According to this theory, a poorly made children's film called Spinosaurus was released that year with a hidden agenda. The movie was designed as a low-key attempt to inform the public about living dinosaurs in Southeast Asia that allegedly helped North Vietnam defeat the United States during the war. When this supposed revelation reached federal intelligence agencies, they reportedly viewed it as a direct threat to America's global military reputation and historical narrative. The film allegedly contained scenes depicting American soldiers being consumed by prehistoric predators and military aircraft being destroyed by flying reptiles. In response, the CIA supposedly established a covert group known as NUGET. While the exact meaning of this acronym remains unclear, the organization's mission was remarkably specific. They would function as undercover film critics, systematically destroying the movie's reception through devastating negative reviews. The operation's goal was twofold: prevent audiences from seeing the film, and obliterate the careers of everyone involved in its production. This coordinated campaign of cinematic destruction would supposedly protect America from the embarrassment of having its military prowess undermined by extinct reptiles. The plan allegedly succeeded beyond expectations. Spinosaurus became such a massive commercial failure that no home video copies were ever produced. Nougat agents then seized the original film reels and transported them back to the United States for disposal. However, the story takes an unexpected turn here. Some of the creative concepts from the confiscated film supposedly caught the attention of author Michael Crichton, who then incorporated these ideas into his novel Jurassic Park. Others claim the concepts were repurposed directly for Steven Spielberg's film adaptation instead. This theory essentially suggests that one of the most successful dinosaur franchises in entertainment history originated from a CIA cover-up operation designed to protect American military dignity from a terrible children's movie about communist dinosaurs. The lack of any surviving copies or credible documentation has led many to dismiss Nougat as fabricated content created specifically for conspiracy theory discussions. Yet supporters point to the CIA's documented history of unusual operations and psychological experiments as evidence that such an absurd mission falls within the realm of possibility. Hyper-bovinization, also known as bovoid capitalism, describes a dystopian theory where humanity undergoes systematic transformation into genetically modified cattle within an advanced capitalist system. According to some Anon, human biosphere self-domesticate into genetically modified cattle fucked by machines, human livestock shedding new economies of milk meat and prions. This concept emerges from accelerationist philosopher Nick Land's work and his notion of bovoid excision. The theory suggests that late-stage capitalism operates as an alien intelligence that gradually converts human populations into livestock through a process of genetic and hormonal conditioning. Rather than sudden transformation, this represents a slow domestication where humans become milk and meat producers in automated farming systems. The bovine hormone conditioning component focuses on how recombinant bovine growth hormone, RBGH, is an artificial growth hormone that is made in a lab using genetic technology used in dairy cattle potentially affects human genetics through consumption. Both the natural and recombinant forms of the hormone stimulate a cow's milk production by increasing levels of another hormone known as insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. Some theorists claim this creates gradual physiological changes that make humans more cattle-like over generations. The economies of milk meat and prions refers to a hypothetical future economic system where humans function as biological production units. In this scenario, people become sources of protein, hormones, and other biological materials harvested by automated systems. The inclusion of prions, misfolded proteins that cause degenerative brain diseases, suggests cognitive degradation as part of the process. Accelerationist theory provides the philosophical framework, where capitalism is reaching its limits and the transition is bound to happen. If this tendency goes on unchecked, technological growth will expand to such a degree that humankind's welfare is just an obstacle to capitalism's end goal of brutal efficiency. This connects to Land's broader vision of techno-capital as an inhuman force that ultimately consumes everything in its path, including humanity itself. Total predicative anticipatory software refers to advanced algorithmic systems designed to forecast human behavior, social trends, and individual actions before they occur. These programs allegedly combine massive data collection with machine learning to create what some describe as digital crystal balls for governments and corporations. The concept centers on software that doesn't just analyze past patterns, but actively predicts future decisions with startling accuracy. Unlike simple recommendation algorithms that suggest products you might like, these systems claim to anticipate major life choices, political preferences, and even potential criminal activity days or weeks in advance. Several real-world examples fuel these theories. The National Security Agency's X-Keyscore program processes internet communications to identify future threats. Meanwhile, companies like Palantir have developed software for law enforcement that flags individuals as likely to commit crimes based on their digital footprints and social connections. Predictive policing algorithms already scan social media posts, purchase histories, and location data to generate risk scores for citizens. In Chicago, the police department used software called the Strategic Subject List that assigned numerical risk ratings to residents, often targeting people who hadn't committed any crimes. The conspiracy extends to social media platforms that allegedly use these predictive models to influence elections and shape public opinion. Internal documents from major tech companies have revealed experiments in emotional manipulation through carefully curated content feeds. Financial institutions employ similar technology to predict which customers will default on loans or make large purchases. Credit card companies can reportedly identify relationship changes, job losses, and health crises before the cardholders themselves fully realize what's happening. The most concerning allegations involve what researchers call behavioral pre-crime systems that flag individuals for government watch lists based solely on algorithmic predictions of future misconduct. This entry suggests that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin didn't set foot on Earth's natural satellite during their historic July 1969 mission, but instead landed on an entirely different celestial body masquerading as our moon. The theory builds on existing hollow moon conspiracies, which gained traction after Apollo seismic experiments revealed the lunar surface reverberating for hours, like a struck bell when impacted by spacecraft debris. Rather than accepting scientific explanations about the moon's dry, rigid composition causing prolonged vibrations, some theorists propose these results indicate our familiar moon is actually an artificial construct. The wrong moon hypothesis takes this further, claiming that Earth orbits multiple lunar bodies, or that what we observe as the moon switches positions with a decoy satellite. These theorists point to the unusual density differences between Earth and the moon, noting that our satellite is only 60% as dense as our planet. They argue this supports their claims about artificial construction or substitution. Several elements fuel these beliefs. The Apollo missions discovered processed metals like titanium and brass in lunar samples, materials that seem unusually refined for natural formation. The magnetized moon rocks also puzzled scientists, since the moon wasn't thought to have a magnetic field strong enough to create such effects. Navigation and timing discrepancies during the Apollo 11 mission provide additional ammunition for these claims. Some theorists argue that slight variations in expected orbital mechanics and communication delays suggest the spacecraft reached a different destination than planned. They propose that either mission control directed the astronauts to an alternative lunar body, or that atmospheric effects caused them to mistake their actual landing location. The theory often incorporates elements of the 1970 Soviet hypothesis that positioned the moon as an alien megastructure. This adds layers claiming that advanced civilizations created multiple artificial satellites, with Apollo 11 accidentally landing on the wrong installation in a cosmic shell game. Modern orbital photography showing Apollo landing sites gets dismissed by theorists as evidence planted on the substitute moon, maintaining the deception decades later. The final entry in this video refers to the theory of supersensory knowledge stored in the cloaca. It's a bizarre and fringe claim, often dismissed outright, but that's exactly what makes it interesting. The cloaca is a multi-purpose organ found in birds, reptiles, and some mammals. It's used for reproduction, digestion, and waste elimination. But in this theory, the cloaca is believed to do something else entirely: store or transmit information beyond the five senses. According to the claim, certain animals, especially birds, have access to instinctive knowledge not learned through experience. Examples include migratory birds traveling thousands of kilometers with no training, or animals reacting to earthquakes and solar flares before they happen. Rather than relying only on genetic memory or environmental cues, this theory suggests the cloaca functions as a kind of antenna or biological access point, a sensory gateway tied to Earth's magnetic field, or even to a hidden layer of consciousness. In some variations, it's believed this organ can store memories not just from one lifetime, but from previous ones. This ties into broader ideas of reincarnation and inherited trauma, though framed in anatomical terms. There's also a connection made between this theory and the behavior of certain reptiles during ritualized mating or hibernation. Some point to ancient depictions of snakes coiled in patterns that resemble energy spirals, suggesting hidden symbolism around the base of the spine, another cloaca-adjacent zone in many species. The idea gained a second life online in the 2010s, where users in fringe science forums mixed it with concepts from chakra systems, magnetoreception, and quantum memory. It became a kind of strange biological conspiracy, suggesting that nature has organs we barely understand, and that some creatures might be tapping into something much deeper than instinct. At its weirdest, this theory hints that the real reason we don't fully understand certain animals has nothing to do with intelligence, and everything to do with information flowing through channels we refuse to study.